Welcome back. This is Undeniable 16 at a multicultural center, or no. MSU's administration has reached a tipping point where they finally announced on February 14th at a board of trustees meeting that they are going forward with plans to build a new freestanding building, a multicultural center on campus. Project has been pushed for years and apparent racist incidents have prompted administration action. But what is really going on here, and what will this mean if it's enacted? This is Undeniable Sergei. Here we'll highlight news more watches reported, things that weren't reported, and further information on indoctrination and leftist bias at Michigan State University. First, we should probably go over or talk about what even is multiculturalism. What does it mean? So, by ThoughtCo, they define multiculturalism is the way in which a society deals with cultural diversity, both at a national and at the community level. Sociologically, multiculturalism assumes that society as a whole benefits from increased diversity through harmonious coexistence of different cultures. Now, is this good or bad? Good, obviously. By that definition, that is pretty much what America is. But there's some important key points and differences. In America, we multicultural society, multi-ethnic, multi-religious, what have you, but not all are considered equal. America is multicultural, but there is, or at least used to be a lot more so, of a predominating social fabric, certain sets of values that were dominant over everything else, that clearly defined America as America and not as a different nation. It's what I would say attributed also to our success. These are mostly from these social fabric values, what have you, mostly came from a Western, Judeo-Christian culture, what have you, whether it's from Christian morality or religion or Judeo morality. It certainly came from one area of one culture, what have you, and so this benefits and negatives. So obviously, lots of benefits. In America, we've seen also in other parts of the world where America was one of the first nations that really have, at least in modern context, a a mixing of, not only people, but cultures that's been pretty well successful. A lot of countries in the world are still very, homogenous in one form, and obviously with globalism, that's changing, or the opposite. But benefits and negatives. So obviously benefits, so free exchange of ideas. So, in a sense, competition of ideals. It's non-status, so it's informing that hopefully with multiculturalism, there's more than, it's not just only one thing, that only one influence that's happening. So obviously, this is very good benefit. The Nazis and obviously the USSR, they wanted one prevalent culture. They did as much as they could to strip every other part they could except for the ideology and fabric they wanted to create. So they stripped away, what were the actual tolerant cultures. They stripped away, as much as they could, Christianity, Judaism, for more, and other things, obviously, for more, material, atheist, and essentially a very secular philosophy. They needed something that was going to be branded for the whole nation, for all the people, no matter who you were, to, in a sense, have more control over you. So that's a benefit that multiculturalism hopefully would apply a non-status mentality, competition of ideals, essentially a free market system without not using, business transaction, but the transaction of ideas or ideals. So obviously a lot of negatives too. So lots of things can be done in the name of multiculturalism. So one is, and people don't always like to talk about this, but it can be used to attack essentially the West, or what we have seen as the West. The promotion of non-Western, anti-American, and anti-Christian ideals and values, whether it's in their classrooms, in our government, you know, in our hospitals. You can, if you're, we'll get more to this, but essentially what it does, it's trying to, and this is what a big difference is. If you say multiculturalism is, you know, different cultures and ideals mixing together, that's one thing. But to say it's, you know, cultures and values mixing together, but they're not all equal, some are going to be better, you should have some values in your society and not others, and so that's what could be a negative of multiculturalism. Like, for example, you know, a culture that allows, the murder of a raped girl, which in the teachings, of Islam, and obviously not all Muslims ascribe the same as Christianity. Not all Christians subscribe to what the Bible says. Obviously, I would argue that the Bible, especially the New Testament, wholeheartedly has better values, more tangible, better ones for all of society. And so some cultures, are just like, let's say, culture of, the USSR, obviously did not really care much about human life, did not care about individual liberty, freedom, something in America we very much care a deal about. And so it also can relativize truth. If we're saying that multiculturalism, the cultures and all that stuff they're just equal, they all have their benefits, there's no bad, it becomes, essentially what we've seen today. It's about your truth, it's about your values, your ideas, and it takes out and can strip away, this idea, what is true, that there is, there's truth, and that's apart from any one person, minus obviously Christ, but minus from any one human being, that we can't ourselves by saying, oh, it's our values to say this, my values, your truth. That doesn't make it your truth. That truth is separate from that. So it can relativize truth and make it, if we take away that there's an absolute, right to life, or an absolute truth, or there's a deity, there's God, then we have several ramifications as we've seen. So just going through this first part of just defining, going through, what it means and how it can, what it's done. So multiculturalism can be a great thing. Essentially it's what you could describe, and hopefully we can describe America as, but it can't be a version of multiculturalism that equates all cultures, equates all values as being, equal. But also this multiculturalism needs to allow for cultural competition. So, a school can't say, oh, we don't want you talking about, Christ in the classroom or his teachings, but we'll be okay if you, come over and start teaching about, Hinduism in the classroom, and having the platform being biased to one religion or another, but allowing, no matter what comes up, to which values, which, cultural values compete and win. In addition, you've got to have founders, hopefully, like a righteous, moral and righteous values predominate. And so obviously some cultures don't have those, or you could say they're different, or some, philosophies won't say that there is absolute right or wrong. So that could really hurt society if we start teaching our kids that. So as America has been multiculturalism, I think that's been good. Obviously the last decade or so, look at the 60s, probably wasn't the most beautiful thing, but multiculturalism, where ideas can compete, where they're not all equal, and where you let for righteousness to prevail. So like in America, as we've seen, you can be a Jew or an atheist, but you both value the life of others, free speech, hard work, etc., etc. So second, where does MSU's multiculturalism fit? So where, if this happened, or based on what has happened, is this good? Is this bad? How has my MSU viewed multiculturalism? What has it done? Sort of stuff like that. So I'll just list, what I believe are things that make it a little more complex, may question MSU's multiculturalism, to see, where does that leave us? So recently, MSU ICAs, which are intercultural aides, it's kind of like an RA position, but essentially the job is to handle cultural transitions. Not that very important of a job. They essentially they're treated like RAs. They get their own room, and they deal with how to transition the culture of MSU or here. I don't know how they don't realize that's a waste of money. But anyhow, so MSU ICAs and community directors, they held a meeting to discuss and just their, how shocked and appalled they were with the Morning Watch's report on the cultural appropriation. Halloween posters put across campus, which got a lot of media attention. MSU's president has equated ICE with racial bias and hate incidents. Professor has, this one of many cases about professors, but there's a professor who's you're a moron if you vote Republican, and you probably, voting for them probably just means you woke up on the wrong side of bed. Professors ranting in classes about the Morning Watch shouldn't be able to, did not like how we reported on the political college at MSU and the financial contributions of professors. Pro-Trump students being attacked and harassed in 2016. Student government encouraging illegals to vote, anti-ICE legislation, student government shooting down the American flags bill. The bill that I introduced was meant to add flags to campus, and going in thought, discussion about logistics, where are we gonna put these, all the stuff that answers to, and they just tore it down because the oppression and hatred represented by the flag. Protesters at conservative events, and pretty much very few protesters never at any leftist events on campus. Students trashing and harassing pro-life students at a Cemetery of the Innocents display. This happened earlier this academic year. They were stealing signs, they were tearing down flags, harassing, swearing, really just disgusting. MSU training and work employees saying not to use sir or ma'am. Also, this other trainings by for employees have given them gender identity unicorn sheets showing that the way you feel, in your heart, the way you rationalize or think, brain, and then the way you were created as they depict as illustration of a unicorn, by your genitals of how you're male or female, or what they say is other genders. All three of those different separate ways of choosing, all valid, and not one has to predominate the other. Really sick stuff. Conservative organization flyers being regularly torn down. For example, there was a bunch of pro-life flyers torn down, and leftists on Twitter were even bragging about it. Student government trying to remove me for encouraging conservatives to run. State news, obviously tax funded, just, they're bad. They published an editorial on 2018 midterms, pretty much saying, we're not going to endorse a certain Democrat candidate, and we're not technically endorsing, for these Democrat candidates. But if you vote for a Republican, you're voting for people actively fighting against civil rights and are racist. Really just a horrible editorial board endorsement. Pretty bad. And this is paid by students forcefully. Through the tax, which obviously you can vote on, and blah, blah, but still, it's a very biased publication. And their opinions are all just one-sided. They don't really take conservative ones, etc. College Republicans having difficulty last year getting a room on campus to host speakers. MSU's admin was trying to cite policy, but they never showed the group of the policy until the Attorney General at the time, Leonard, stepped in. Then we were able to figure that situation out. Also comments from, Black Student Alliance and other left-leaning groups on campus, but MSU being, too white and calling for, quotas and more minority staff and faculty. And that's obviously not all. That's not all by far. So the question is, if applicable, how is this going to affect or will affect MSU's Multicultural Center, a new one? Is this a promotion of good multiculturalism where we can say, let's let ideas compete, let's let cultures compete. They're not all equal. There's winners and losers. Some are better than others. And we're not going to sit around and try to relativize everything or just try to shame and blast, America or Christianity and just have this be an anti-American, center essentially. Could it be like that? It's hopefully it wouldn't be, but looking off of, just that list of stuff and, you hear what's going on and the costs associated with this project, it's not good. So I would say, no, this is not going to promote, what I would describe as good or actual multiculturalism. And this isn't, just a light fact of, just trying to throw off, a group's initiative or several groups' initiative over the last many years. But it's a serious, look at what's happened. Look at, how these groups that are pushing this project have related in the years past, what they've said, how they said this place is going to run. And it's not good. And then you have students saying, this place is too white, we need to have quotas, we need to, not respect ICE, the student government going off its hinges as usual. And now they're trying to, just last week there was a forum with the MSU's president, and someone was making, not very good comments, several were saying these were racist comments and, not good stuff that you should be saying. But, it's a public space. They were using this online portal to send questions in. People got offended. And now the student government is trying to get warrants. For what exactly? He can say those things, protected by our First Amendment. Student government, maybe they should read the actual Constitution instead of their own, which does not, ascribe much of American value. But you should, just stuff like this, like how are these people that have been, pushing this kind of stuff for the last year and multiple years, what will this multicultural center be different from that? Won't it just be the same? Bottom line, based on evidence from student government meetings, MSU's administration and staff, their actions and comments, and further comments based on the committee to, build a freestanding multicultural building, as they call themselves, and more. This isn't just a new multicultural center. There actually already is one, second floor of the Union. Sure, it's a little small if you're going by, room and space definitions. But this center will be a bad version of multiculturalism, one we don't want. It'll be, and, interestingly, enough got some pushbacks last week from several conservatives, saying, this is overreaction, just let it happen. But no, this place will be a targeting of conservative values, American Christian values. It will not allow free competition of ideals, nor will allow probably free competition of who can use the space. And it will not be an inclusive space. I can tell you that right now. And this isn't new, new things I'm saying. The judging what this multicultural center will be is not based on what they think it will be. It's based on what they already do, what these people already do on campus, what they've already done in the other multicultural center. We've had that space has been used, pronouns workshops and other just leftist events, actively promoting one side of the ideology, not allowing for free competition of ideals. And most of them, would say all cultures are equal, each have their benefits and negatives, but we can't say one's better than the other, which is a problem. We cannot have a society or a university where we say, okay, let's have multiculturalism, but we won't allow for free competition. We will shun, certain values. We will say that all, no culture is bad, no culture is good, because now we've relativized truth. We're not incentivizing, competition and actual learning of what values and what cultures are good. We've essentially just taken away and trashed the American model. So I say no to this, but we live in America, so feel free to express your thoughts below. Would love to hear what you have to say. And as always, this has been Undeniable with Sergei Kelly, episode 16, Anti-Multiculturalism Center, or no. Been with, obviously, Morning Watch. Make sure you subscribe on the website. And also, you go to social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Follow and like those places. And also, make sure to subscribe on the website. It's the best way to get content, to staying up to date with the dominant and unwelcoming leftist culture at Michigan State University. Thank you.